there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. The second item on the agenda is public input. And this is a time for anyone to say whatever they want. Seeing that no one wants to do that, I'll move on to item 3, approval of the agenda. And I need to add update from the Convention and Visitors Bureau to the agenda before old business. And that was on an agenda. And then I think the agenda got updated and it fell off, but so put that back on. That will be item just before old business, so it would be 6.
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
We have a motion by Vilhauer, second by Roby. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 4 is council consideration of a bid award for the 3rd Avenue Southwest Drainage Improvements Project number 1910 to J&J Earthworks, Inc. in the amount of $133,605.60.
I make a motion to approve the item, or the item as written.
We have a motion by Manti
Second.
and a second by Vilhauer. Or, sorry, Lallam. Sorry about that, Adam. Heath, would you tell us about this one, please?
Yes, absolutely, Madam Mayor. Members of council, this is, we're getting down to one of our last few bid awards. As the mayor mentioned in the title of the action item here, this is for drainage improvements for 3rd Avenue Southwest, located between 3rd Street Southwest to 2nd Street Southwest for that, a majority of that entire block. And if Pete could pull up my screen, I've actually got some pictures of what it is we're trying to correct and mitigate on this project to share with the council for their information. Good to go. Am I zoomed in enough there on the?
Yeah, nothing.
That mountain's nice. I wish I was there right now.
Is that the one? Okay. So on 3rd Avenue Southwest, we got a call last fall with some drainage issues, and these pictures exemplify the lack of any kind of positive drainage from the edge of this street. This is the southerly edge of that street section that we're looking to primarily mitigate the runoff issues and help prevent severe icing and ponding like this from occurring. This particular project received 3 bids from 3 separate contractors. The apparent low bidder was J&J Earthworks at $133,605.60. That amount compares well with the engineer's estimate of $134,000, roughly $600. The engineering office is recommending award of this bid. The budget that we had to work within was $142,700, so we're well within that. And I also wanted to share that this is one of the projects that we farmed out to our consultant engineers, IDG, right here in town, who did the design work on this for us under that task order agreement that the council previously approved for miscellaneous engineering services. We hope to also have IDG do the construction administration under that same separate professional services agreement for this carrying out this work through the construction season this year. I'm glad to help answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Councilman Lallam?
Heath, on this one, we're taking the whole road up then, and then doing the rest of it as well? So.
Yeah, the primary focus here is on the south side where we'll be adjusting some of the drainage inlets, the storm sewer inlets, and I could, if I could, call staff up to talk more specifics. I know at one point we contemplated putting in some edge drain, and the scope of how much of the road we were actually going to be removing fluctuated a couple times through the design. So if Colin, the assistant city engineer, could talk on that for me, I'd appreciate it.
So, yes, he kind of nailed it with what we're doing. We are doing curb on both sides, full reconstruct of the road, and we are putting in an inlet, one on the north side and then I think a couple on the south side trying to alleviate this drainage problem.
Do you envision any other issues with like sewer or like in that range? Any storm sewer issues where we're going to end up going farther past that block?
No, our consultant engineer did do a good survey of that area, and the storm sewer we're tying into is in the intersection to the west. So I don't think we're going to have to do too much more.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman, why did you have? Oh, okay. Very good. Councilman Vilhauer?
Not a question, but a comment. I drove that at roughly noon today, and there were some pumps running both sides of the street, up and down the street, pumping water constantly out there. And
I guess I do want to add that we did look at putting a sump pump collection pipe in the front yards along the back of the curb. And after talking with IDG about that, it just didn't make sense in this instance. It added about $12,000 in cost, at least estimate-wise. And they would have to not pump into it during frozen time at all because it wouldn't have been very deep at all. And they just suggested against it because they don't think it would have really helped the issue too much.
Colin, I got a question for you.
Yep.
Just kind of wondering, did they offer any alternatives to that? Because I know that's kind of something that we're looking at systematically in the city. Is just with the constant pumping. I live in that neighborhood, so I know that is quite a bit of pumping down there. Are there any alternatives? Because otherwise, I just see us having to deal with all that water going in there anyway, and just ruining the infrastructure as it is.
I guess they didn't offer a good solution, or any solution really, beyond that pipe. And I guess if we were to go into too many other solutions, the cost would probably skyrocket. I would say the $12,000 was probably the least expensive option that we would have had. But I think adding in the storm sewer inlets is going to help tremendously. So pumping into the curb line, and the water is actually going to be taken away from storm sewer, where currently it just sits in the low spots and there is no storm sewer.
Okay, so just quick follow-up. With the picture that we're looking at there, had it gotten warm and then they were pumping and then it got cold and that's where that freeze came from, along with the standing water?
Yes, that's correct. From the call we got last fall, that's after our investigation of what was going on, that's the conclusion that we came to, is sump pump discharges at the time of year when we were seeing freezing temperatures, which exaggerated the issue as seen in these pictures.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments? See none, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 5 is council consideration to authorize the mayor to sign a professional services agreement for engineering services for a stormwater utility fee and structure assessment with Short Elliott Hendrickson, Inc., SEH, and authorizing the city engineer to execute a supplemental letter agreement in the amount of up to $27,890. Have a motion by Roby and a second by Albertson. Heath, will you please tell us about this one?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So before you tonight, council members, is what we talked about briefly at the last meeting, where I gave you a heads up about our proposals that we had out to a few consultants. We've received those proposals back and analyzed those on a systematic basis with internal staff. The assistant city engineer, Colin, the city attorney, Matt, and myself sat down and scored the proposals with a commonly used rubric that the city's used in the past for professional service proposals. It's a weighted scoring system that assesses the proposals on numerous factors, including past experience, cost for their services, experience of the individuals working on directly with the project, and other factors of that nature. In review of those proposals, and which also happened to be the lowest proposal, SEH was the one that rose to the top with the scoring of the rubrics that we used. And those are the ones that we're bringing forth to council. Their proposals we're bringing forth to council for approval. Now, to talk generally about this proposal and the services SEH would provide, this is to help the city engineering office and the city assess the multiple facets that come with establishing a stormwater utility. It's a conversation we've had in the past during previous bid awards that we've gone through, the shuffling of some of the projects that we've had to do, which entirely really came down to the budget limitations that we're dealing with right now within the city to perform some of our capital improvement projects. And in an effort to try to keep the capital improvement program sustainable for the city, not only for new construction, but potentially also for stormwater sewer maintenance as well. This is one of those low-hanging fruits, if you will, that the city has not implemented yet to this point. These services, what SEH would do is help the city of Watertown assess what kind of a format would work best for our community, how that stormwater fee, if the council were to eventually adopt one, would be best calculated to suit our needs as a community. It would help steer the discussions on where those monies go to in relations to new capital improvement projects or general fund operating expenses. It would do an assessment on related communities in the region and their stormwater utilities and the types of rates that they implement in their communities, and also would provide a forecasting, a revenue summary for us so that we would have a good estimation of the amount of funds that program like this would bring in to perform these kinds of work on our storm sewer systems. As far as the budget goes for these funds, the SEH proposal is in the amount of $27,890. Where we're proposing to pay for that out of is partially from the 2019 engineering operating funds, as well as a likely budget supplement of some measure for the funds that we don't have in the current operating budget. And we reviewed this with the finance officer and the mayor, and are comfortable making that proposal as far as the supplement goes, if need be, by the time the services are due in full. I'd be glad to help answer any questions that the council might have or talk through some of the points that the SEH will be addressing. Alec Boyce with SEH is here this evening as well, with a consulting group that would be performing this work. I'm sure he'd be glad to help answer any questions as well.
Thank you. And, okay, Councilman Vilhauer?
A question I've got, I'll address it to whomever. It is necessary, this is a question, it is necessary to engage an outside consultant to help us go down this road? I mean, we're talking about spending $30,000. I mean, this is something that we do need this expertise to implement?
Yes, that's a very, very fair question, Councilman Vilhauer. From an engineering staffing standpoint, I would say that the necessity is high to pull in a consultant to help achieve this. We have had some very brief preliminary discussions with the city attorney and myself and the mayor, and have contemplated what it would look like for us to implement this internally. And I just don't see that we have the manpower to do the work that would be needed to put this together in an effective manner.
Okay. Then a follow-up question is, we go down this road, I see the proposed calendar or the tentative calendar. How are we dealing with this relative to our budgeting process? I mean, it looks like we're supposed to be ready to run with this as of beginning of 2020 or late this year. I mean, how are we dealing with this relative to the budget? Because we'll be passing the budget within the next couple of months now, and we won't have the results of this in place until a few months after that.
Yes, Madam Mayor?
Go ahead.
So the way I addressed that in the proposal is I made it very clear to the consultants that we would expect a budget number from them for an estimate of the amount of revenues that this type of utility would provide. And I requested that estimate for the budget by the end of August, I believe is how the proposal reads. So the selected consultant, SEH, is full aware of that because of the language in the proposal and would work with us closely to make that one of the targeted items and timelines to be met in their work processes is to create that estimated revenues amount.
One more?
And one more, as long as we got the floor. I know the bid was quite a bit less than, or was quite a bit lower than the other two, and, you know, sometimes red flags go off, or, I mean, or we're comparing apples to apples here, something didn't get missed, or everybody understood what they were bidding on?
Yeah, we did make some follow-up calls regarding that. You know, the second low bidder at 38 grand is a sizable increase, but still in the ballpark. And then the third bid of over 114,000 is obviously what we would have considered an outlier. We had that more specific discussion with that consultant. It appears it was apparent to us in them answering our questions of the logic that was applied there that they were anticipating a much more in-depth, detailed analysis of the structure and the setup of a stormwater utility. They related it to some examples in other larger communities where they've had to reestablish and redesign their stormwater utility in a larger community, where how they initially had it set up had kind of worn its course, so to speak, and they needed to look at reassessing how those calculations were made for each property owner throughout their communities. Obviously, Watertown's not to that point. We're not looking to get that extensive with our establishment here of a stormwater utility. And so the basics that are outlined in the proposal are exactly what SEH has proposed to meet and provide to us.
I would like to add, we're kind of loosely tossing around the term bid. This was not a bid. This was a request for proposals, and you don't have to accept the low one. We don't base it solely on the fee for the services. We pick the consultant that we think will give us the product that we want. And in this case, it was SEH, and we have confidence in their ability to deliver. They did have numerous conversations with various people, which probably it could have given them an edge on what we were looking for, and they were able to refine their proposal. And, you know, they didn't add in anything there that we weren't looking for, which is helpful. So it wasn't a bid, though, just to
Correct.
point that out. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Councilwoman Manti?
Other than the financial aspect of it, you know, to work with the city and be able to provide more, you know, capital for infrastructure or budget or whatever, is there any kind of, ecological or safety kind of advantages to that, or flooding prevention? I'm just curious if there's more to it than just, oh, you have this much water, this is your cost. I think it would help people if they knew that there was more than a benefit to just, oh, we got a sewer or stormwater assessment. Does that make sense? Do you understand my question?
It does. Councilwoman Manti, I think that if I understand you correctly, where you're going with your question is, you know, the nuts and bolts of a stormwater utility, if we were to eventually pass one, would be obviously to create revenue to perform projects and perform improvements on the storm sewer system throughout the community. Now, that being said, those projects that we do slate year in and year out, those inherently have those benefits that you're alluding to, the environmental benefits, the runoff management, the sensitivity to avoiding flooding or helping improve flooding issues. All those things are inherently weighed out in those projects. And what I mean by that is when engineering office selects those projects through our CIP list of work to be done, those are the targeted areas that we usually start with. You know, where are our shortfalls in the storm sewer system? That can include natural drainage channels. It can include storm sewer pipe. It can include a multitude of public infrastructure improvements that help manage that system. So that is a very important factor to be considered, and one that would benefit, inherently through the projects that we would select and administer.
That answered my question. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Keith, I've got a quick question.
Okay, Michael?
I'm not sure if this is misplaced or not, or if it pertains to it or not, but I'm just kind of curious with the stormwater, since it does go into the system, and essentially, like, as I understand it, the way that stormwater works is assessing how much runoff comes off your property, whether that be off your roof, off your concrete, what have you. I know we're assessing it a little bit differently, or at least we're thinking about it right now, but does this take into account the extra runoff that we get from people who are pumping a lot? Does it look at that at all, or is that completely separate?
Yes.
Because it goes into the system, so I guess that's what I'm wondering.
So in consideration of that question, I think that the appropriate answer would be some of those details would be fleshed out through this work with SEH, and it's staff's intent up front to again want to keep the arrangement of this fee to be as simple and straightforward as possible. There are some communities that use complex calculations, some that calculate the actual percent imperviousness on a lot, on every lot throughout town. And the more in-depth of a system that you get like that, the more work it takes to keep that system up from year to year. And the more staff and workload that creates as well, the more need for staff. So that's something we're trying to avoid with this. We're not trying to create an animal here that's going to be hard to control. We're trying to create something that would likely, and again, this will be fleshed out through this project with SEH, but would likely establish a flat fee for residential, for example. We've seen some reports of regional stormwater utility fees that range anywhere from $2 to $5 per lot per month. And but those kind of details are something that we would move forward with in this study and determine and target the correct way to approach it for the city of Watertown. But I would envision trying to keep it as simple as we can, and it would likely end up being, as far as my recommendation would be, to be some form of a flat rate fee that we would assess, and not get into calculating sump pump flows, for example, not get into calculating actual percentages of imperviousness and things of that nature. Now, if you would want to chime in any further with that, you certainly can, but off the cuff, that's my response to that question. There's a microphone there, Alec, if you could, just hit the button and it'll light up.
Madam Mayor, members of the council and staff, thank you again for considering SEH for this work. The bottom line with this is to get all this stuff out on the table, work with staff, to take you through a process which examines this clearly. One of the first pieces that we heard loud and clear when we sat down and began to talk with staff and the mayor about this was keep it simple. This is a starting point, but keep it simple so that our administrative costs are at a very minimum part. We can take this and make it as complex as you want or as simple as you want, but that's the message we heard in our diagnosis. So that's what our intent is here, is to take the questions that we're feeling today, put those out on the table, have a discussion about them, run the calculations. Again, and you asked a good question with regard to the timing on the budget. We understand fully what the provisional budget timeline is in South Dakota, and the final budget timeline will work accordingly. So, answer your question?
Thank you. For anyone who's curious, that mysterious voice from the cloud is Councilman Michael Hoyer, who is participating remotely. Other questions? Is that Joe? No, Joe's his father. All right, well, I will look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 6 is update from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we have Julie Knutson, the Executive Director, here to do that for us.
Good afternoon. I just brought this just in case, so I didn't intend on using all of it, just so you know, just in case there's questions. Well, I know, and I promised Don it would be short and sweet, so I have to hold my promise. Okay, I did a short presentation for everyone. I remember being on the agenda a couple of months early in the year, and there was a lot of talk in this room and a very full chambers when all of the GOS information was coming out. And then I was on there again, and there was some other thing that filled the place up, and so I conceded and said, that's okay, we can do it later. And now we're in July, so I apologize, but I don't ever want to be on the agenda and have you guys all stressed out when I'm up here. I want you to be like relaxed and open, so that's right. Let's go to where? Oh, you're going to do it for me? That's perfect. Thank you. Okay. So the Watertown Convention and Visitors Bureau, I know that a lot of you, we've had conversations, and I want to assume that everybody kind of knows who we are and what we do, but I'm going to, for the new members, give just a really brief update about who we are and what we do. I have 2018, 19, and 20, and really I'm going to just give you an overview of 2018, which was a great year. We've got a couple of things so far in 2019 that are very positive, and then kind of a next steps type of situation with budget hearings coming up that I would just really appreciate consideration about. So, do I just tap it? Okay, there we go. So today's objective is just insights to what we do and why, who benefits, examples and results, but budgets and spending, current and future growth, and financial forecast. So the Convention and Visitors Bureau's mission is working to bring visitors to Watertown and wow them while we're here. So plain and simple, we want to attract visitors here so they spend their money and then off they go home, and we don't really have to school their children or collect their garbage. And so it's as the finance office has said many times, it's the closest thing to free money that we'll ever get. So we like that. Who we are, we're actually two organizations. We're the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We've been incorporated since 2009. We're a 501c6. We bring leisure, business, family, adventure travelers, meetings, sports, tour operator groups, journalists, and convention groups to Watertown. We support local suppliers, which would be your hotel industry, hospitality, food, beverage, entertainment, attractions, and retail. Just about everybody that a visitor would wander into their business, we try to support them and help them. We provide the visitor with an exceptional experience once they arrive. We really work hard for that, and we get really good feedback about that, but we don't take that at all lightly. We really want people to enjoy being here and know that they're genuinely welcome. The CVB staff, operations, industry, and governmental relations are what the CVB budget pays for. We kind of take care of the lion's share of operating the business and then making sure that we are in the places we need to be when we need to be there, meeting the people and talking about the things we need to talk about. The Business Improvement District, which is your local hotel association, the WCVB, we are the administrator and the CFO of the bid board. The bid contributes funds each year that are matched by South Dakota Tourism, allowing Watertown to reach millions of potential visitors. The bid also has a grant process and contributes funding to new events and also existing events, allowing them to grow in attendance. Since 2009, the South Dakota Tourism and the bid via the CVB have invested $2.75 million in marketing and into the city of Watertown throughout the country, and $500,000 in grants for events have been given out. So who benefits from what we do? The hotels, attractions, restaurants, venues, any events that are on businesses, whether you're nonprofit, privately owned, or city owned. And the reason why I kind of want to put a little bit forward with the city partnerships, because we do have attractions that are city-owned, like the Bramble Park Zoo, the Watertown Aquatic Center, Prairie Lakes, or Prairie Winds Golf Course. And of course, Lake Kempesca isn't city-owned, but yet it's a really big attraction, and it's kind of one of those things that Watertown is known for. So we do things like billboard and direct mail, social media, cable TV, just about every medium that's out there we use to market the entire city, to include all of the city entities. Our primary markets are Denver, Fargo, Minneapolis, Sioux City, Sioux Falls, La Crosse, Eau Claire, Omaha, secondary, the states of Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, South Dakota, North Dakota, and Wisconsin. We host journalists, we host groups of tour operators, we do video shoots and photo shoots, and we also give IT at the city and any of the city entities or assets, any marketing assets that we own are theirs to use. So we put a lot of money into our marketing with the South Dakota Tourism, and so we really want to share those things and make sure everybody can be successful and we're not duplicating efforts. So just an example of that, and I just kind of brought out our best stuff here. This is one that we had on a digital billboard in Fargo and Omaha, which I really liked. The investment on this was $16,471 last year for peak season. I thought it was really attractive. We got a ton of feedback from this. Our Facebook posts, this is just a little snippet of them, but when we do our marketing, which the bid board pays for with South Dakota Tourism, but we oversee and we proof all of that, the CVB does. These are ongoing, so every week I get, quite a few of these to proof. Here's another one of our beloved olive at the zoo that was taken from by a journalist that we had in town, and we use those for our display creative. So we really try to integrate all of the shining stars in Watertown, everything that are our best assets, and we do really try to include the zoo, the aquatic center, the golf course, all of those things. This is one thing I do have, actually a hard copy of this. This is one of our best direct mail pieces that we've ever done. I love this piece. It went out to Sioux Falls, Sioux City, and Fargo, and we had actually some coupons in it for the zoo and also the Redland Art Center. $20,000 investment. This is just the other page. So Vintigues was also included. We don't charge anybody to be a part of this. This is all the peak season marketing that we put together with our marketing partners. So you probably, how do you know if it works? You probably are wondering that. You send all this stuff out, you spend all this money, how do you know if it works? It does, and because of our partnership with South Dakota Tourism, we have a tool called Arrivalist. So I want you guys to know that when we are putting this marketing together, the bid board pays for it, South Dakota Tourism pays for it, but it comes across my desk specifically, and we are the ones, the CVB is the ones that make it happen and do all the proofing and go through all the campaign stuff. So Arrivalist, this is going to blow your mind, but these are results from January through December of 2018. The money invested in our marketing campaign is taken very seriously, and the analytics allow us to make data-driven adjustments in real time and strategic decisions based on the performance for future campaigns, and then we take it one step further. So these are all people that have engaged in our $373,000 peak season campaign. They have engaged in our digital platforms, and we have marked their arrival in Watertown, South Dakota via GPS and their cell phone. So it's not a perfect science, but people spend 5.5 hours on their cell phones average. So it's pretty interesting. It's a little creepy, but we'll take it a step further, and all of these green dots represent the people that were in town for 1.5 days, 1 day and 8 hours, 5,938 trips. These people all engaged, and mind you, this stuff is out there in other states. This is not anything that you can even find on your Facebook page. It won't scroll through because we're geo-targeting other states. So these are people that arrived in Watertown, South Dakota, and you'll notice along at the bottom, Highway 212, you can see where they came off the interstate. I would assume the Redland Art Center was a nice stop for them. Walmart seems pretty busy. So you can kind of see as they're going through town where they're stopping, if you kind of know the layout of Watertown. And South Dakota Tourism is a subscriber of this, so we can go through our campaigns and drill down and make sure that things are working. And Our marketing partners check this stuff every day to make sure that everything we're doing is producing. So we also have another thing that's coming this year in 2018 that will probably really creep you out, but it will sense your state of mind based on the position you're holding your cell phone. So if you wake up in the morning and you're checking your mail and you're kind of leaning back, it'll know that you're in a relaxed state. And our advertising will be fed to you in a certain way other than it would be if you were stuck in traffic and checking your Facebook page, which you're not supposed to do. But so we're targeting people based on how relaxed they are, or if it's after work and they're having a glass of wine, or so just by the tilt and the time of day. And so I don't know, but it's pretty intricate. There's a lot of people way smarter than me putting this stuff together. So, but I love looking at it and I love the analytics. So anyway, we do know it's working, and we know that based on what they're telling us, and if it's not working, they change it up. So we can feel really good about the money that we're spending to market Watertown. And this is why we know it's working as well, and this is the stuff that you guys want to know. I can show you on this graph, we have combined the bid board budget, so what the bid board takes in, the $2 per room per night that the bid board brings to the table, and also the CVB is funded primarily by tax revenue from the BBB tax, which is your third penny. So those two combined, we are kind of hovering around that $500,000 mark, which we've showed the advertising dollars being spent. South Dakota Tourism then doubles that because it's a co-op. So then they just give us that much, so we get that much more. And then the CVB and its operations and relationship building, travel, and then just making sure that people that come here feel welcome and that they get the best service possible. The red line is your BBB tax. Starting in 2009, as you can see, in 2015, we have really taken a swoop up. And we have, I believe, had, let's see, in 2018, our hotels hosted 125,000 room nights of the 240 available. So that is over 50% occupancy, which is huge. We have 2 hotels that have announced that they will be building and finished, one this year and one next year, I'm told. So we'll be adding another 140 rooms. The only way that the BBB tax grows is if we build hotels or we bring in business, because you always have the same number of rooms and you only have the opportunity to fill those once a night. And so it does plateau because it's not, they've talked about doing a percentage that's not gone anywhere at the state level, but the $2 per room per night has been quite flat. The CVB's budget, we have had 4 raises in our budget in 10 years that total $58,000 total. And so that's not anything, I'm not complaining. I love what I do, and I really am grateful that you guys all let me do what I do for a living. Those are just the facts and the numbers. The BBB tax has increased 45% since 2016. And the CVB budget has increased about 4%. So, and with that, you'll probably guess where I'm going with that. But the next step I see, and I know that anybody on my board, and Don is our liaison, we've had a lot of conversations about sports tourism. We have some really nice facilities here, folks. We have some of the best facilities, top shelf facilities in the state. And Watertown has invested millions in the facilities. I have a list of them there. And people like coming to Watertown. And so we haven't been able to, because it does cost quite a bit and it's terribly labor intensive to get really into sports tourism at the level that we need to be to really drive economic impact. And sports tourism is the largest economic impact driver that tourism can be involved in. The path we are on is great because it's going exactly the way it should. We've got the top shelf facilities, the city investment in the facilities, just for example, $17 million in the Prairie Lakes Wellness Center. What a beautiful place. And I've had consultants walk through there. They're so impressed. The size of town we are with the kind of facilities we have. We really have a lot to be proud of. Our local residents, great quality of life. Our local clubs have phenomenal opportunities here. And so we're supporting our local, the way we should, our local sports teams and things like that. The facility, then, and this is just industry-wide, eventually becomes self-sustaining. It offers members more offerings. The clubs and tournaments begin to draw larger participation for the region, and partnerships form with the CVB. Regional participants are spending the night, and that's how it should be, and that's how it is. Now moving into hosting unowned events. I don't know if everybody heard, but we won a contract with North Star Athletic Association, a 2-year contract with a Division I college that has volleyball and men's and women's basketball championships coming to Watertown. So we have the South Dakota Senior Games. We have opportunities because I've been going to some of the NASC things. There's Ironman triathlons, there's U.S. Figure Skating Association, things like that we can go after. These hosted events are things that we could bring in here, and we just need to have an organized group to do it. I do know that from hosting NSAA, a lot went into that, and I feel like the level of service was exceptional, and so we want to keep that way. High percent of all your athletes are going to be non-local athletes. Regional and national recognition. All eyes were on Watertown because we had a neutral site for a Division I basketball championship through the NAIA League. Everybody was watching to see how that went. Financial and human capital commitments are required. So this is something that isn't going to be something that's just an ask for the city to partner, but we're going to be going to a lot of people, a lot of businesses, a lot of places to put this all together the way it should be put together. More business leads to more business. And once you have something like the NSAA here, word gets around that you do a good job, and it's easier to get the business once you get the business. Stakeholder and sponsor and financial partnerships will be formed. You can't rely on hosted events through rotation or just by or you can't. You either get them through rotation like the senior games, or you're just lucky. And NSAA, we got pretty lucky. What that was is a 20-person meeting they had twice a year, and they just fell in love with Watertown. And now they brought us first basketball, now volleyball. These are very, very huge opportunities, and so I hate to have those pass by. If you don't invite them, entice them, and ask them for their business, they're going somewhere else and someone else will. And that's just the facts. And so I know that everybody has to be on board with this, but those are just the facts. So the next logical step is growth. Sports tourism is not accidental. It needs to be intentional and strategic. And if it's done well, the return on investment is a literal, no pun intended, game changer. We not only impact the third penny, they have to spend the first 2 pennies as well before they get to the third. So the investments that we're talking about here before I got up here, all of those things will be affected as well. Sales, research, the RFP process, the labor-intensive things that you go through just to research what we can bring in takes hours. I have just to prepare for this so that I could put some numbers together in the presentation that I sent the mayor. Took a very long time just because we have to qualify them. Do we have enough hotel rooms? Do we have the venue? When we brought NSAA in, was the court going to be big enough? They all have requirements, and it's very labor intensive, but it's worth it because you can bring in so much money. So we have the large facility investments that will produce huge returns at this next level if we grow. And I just have, I have this in the other information that I sent the mayor, but just some examples, the U.S. Lacrosse Women's National Tournament, the ROI on these types of things. And these are all things that Watertown could sustain. This is a 5-day event with 500 athletes. Over the course of 5 days, we could see 3,300 spectators come through. The visitor spend would be $1.2 million. Visitor spend and ROI or economic impact are different. So economic impact to you guys is the tax revenue. Economic impact to everybody else is how much money they're leaving in town. So, because it helps every business and it helps, everybody else stay in business. So, first, second, and third penny, that would bring in $36,000. So when we're looking at maybe going into the sports tourism business, you can see that there's impact right off the bat. It takes a little while to get these in here. They don't just come because you ask them. You have to, they always, need really good proposals that are very specific, but it can be done. U.S. Figure Skating Governing Council, this is just a meeting. 1,168 room nights over 7 days. Brings in $30,000 in tax revenue. The National Veterans Golden Age Games, $90,000 of all 3 pennies. And then the U.S. Jump Rope Association. I have another one here for the Jugglers Association. It's crazy. And I know Todd was here, or I had Todd on the phone, and I said, if you're around, stop in. The Jugglers Association guarantees us 250 incoming and outgoing departures at the airport. They fly people in from all over the world for the International Jugglers Association competition, and we can fit them in Watertown. I mean, why not? Yankton got the archery, the National Archery competition. That was huge for them. So all of this stuff makes a huge difference. And so when we get to the budget portion and we sit down and talk about it, it's really important to me, and I would really appreciate your consideration when we look at extending the CVB's budget a bit to bring on someone that can really put together some of these opportunities for us, because there are many, many, many of them out there.
Thank you, Julie. Any questions or comments for Julie? Councilman Albertson?
Are you restricted to the charges you can do in the hotel, for instance? Is that, how does that come up for the bed, booze, and board?
The hotel, as far as the $2 per room per night, that's the most we can charge. And Rapid City was leading the charge to do a percentage, but it would depend on what our average daily rate is, whether or not that would be better for Watertown than the $2 per room per night.
Other questions or comments? Don't see any. Thank you very much, Julie.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
your
much.
presentation. All right, item number 6 is old business. Is there any old business? None?
Nope.
Item 7 is new business. Is there any new business?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I could just touch on briefly, there was an article in the paper regarding the Goss roof repairs, which pretty much hit on everything I was going to touch on for council, but we did issue a road closure, street closure permit form today from the engineering office. That'll be on Maple Avenue. And if Pete could pull up my screen quick, I'll just share this for the public's information. At the top of the map here is Kemp running east and west, and then Maple going north and south. The closure will run about half the block of Maple south of Kemp, and there will be a lot of work going on in this area. They have a very large crane that they're utilizing to perform the roof repairs on the Goss building. And there's a little bit of staging area in there as well that they'll be utilizing. The westerly sidewalk will remain open, and traffic coming from the south, there will be access to these businesses on the west side and can get to those buildings through this southerly access onto Maple. And just wanted to point that out for the public's information.
Thank you. Councilman Lallam?
Heath, is that just one day, or how long are they going to be closed for?
Thank you. I was going to mention that as well. The closure is going to be a very extensive closure for over 3 months. It is anticipated to last towards the end of October.
So don't drive down there.
Right, the businesses are all remaining open, even the one in the Goss, right, Heath?
That's correct. It's anticipated that businesses will all remain open.
So Coco and Finn, which is currently in the Goss building, will remain open, and there will be some safety measures taken to protect pedestrians during the construction.
The contractor also indicated this, all the work can be done with this one closure. They don't anticipate needing to close off camp or doing any work from the north side of the building, and can accomplish it all from here. So that is one bit of good news there in relation to the work. And
Colin, did you have something?
if you felt we had time, Madam Mayor, I was going to ask Colin to provide a brief project update on the status of some of our construction projects. If not, we can carry that over to later too.
I wanted to give a quick update too. I issued another road closure one today for 12 North Broadway in front of Burritos on Broadway building. They will be removing that this week.
The Burritos building will be demolished this week.
Yes. So they say about half a day probably for just a small portion of Broadway. Just wanted to give that update too, because it's a little conflicting, but for safety reasons they had to do it.
Okay. I think maybe hold the update for the next meeting, because we do have some other business we need to take care of. Is there any other new business? All right, we do have a reason to go into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2 to go over contractual matters with our attorney. And so need a motion. We have a motion from Councilman Y, a second by Councilman Bueller. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed
Aye.
signify by saying nay. Motion carries. We will not be taking action when we come out.